89-75, your final. Hello, folks. Thanks for watching and or listening using whatever senses might be appropriate. This is the AZ Wildcats postgame show brought to you by the DraftKings Sports app. It's America's #1 sportsbook app. John Schuster, Brad Alice, Rob Lance all joining us for the postgame show. You'll notice that Mike Luke is not here. I'm sure he's on some very special assignment and is looking forward to returning in Arizona's next matchup, but he missed a good one tonight. Before we get to that, keep in mind show notes. Download the DraftKings Sports app now. Use promo code PHNX and make your first deposit of $5. This is for new customers. And get $200 in free bets instantly. Another special going on for every leg you add. You can boost your winnings up to 100%. If there's a gambling problem that you have, 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's the DraftKings Sports app. Let's start with Brad Alice. Wildcats an 89-75 victor tonight. And Brad, we're only starting with you because your birthday is sooner than Rob's, and you're ahead of him alphabetically. But
I'm way older.
Well, you know, one of us knows way older. You're only a little bit older. Certainly, neither of us are more mature than Rob. And an example of this is that Rob has brought out the cable news bookshelf to showcase just how well read he is. Now, that's a very, very important thing to have in studious performances like what we're bringing to the equation tonight. Nevertheless, Brad, 89-75. Wildcats jump out to a big start, and then things get a little harrowing, but they do enough to win, kind of keeping at arm's length and getting a very impressive W against a tough basketball team.
Yeah, obviously there's some concerns when you can't just coast to the win, but liked how they were able to answer. I think the thing that gets me, and I think the thing that surprises people, and you can kind of tell Gus Johnson and Raph were having some trouble, is Arizona plays an inside-out game. They have two dominant big men, but they score, and they score rapidly. And I think that is something teams, especially some of these teams who aren't accustomed to that kind of play, have trouble dealing with. How many times did either Ballo or Tubelis just beat their guys down? Because so often when you run those offenses, you're like Purdue with their 7'9" guy or whatever that kid is, who wait for him to come down. Well, if you're waiting for Tubelis to come down, odds are he's behind you already. I like the way Arizona was able to answer, but again, and I know I was following Rob on Twitter, and he mentioned it too, that, Arizona just can't put these teams away in the first half. And that's a concern because when you have what appears to be a run of death and you let the guy out off the mat, it's a little bit of a concern.
Okay, Rob, is this a product, and this will be something that I think gets talked about a fair amount of time. Arizona's got a 19-point lead in this game. At one point, Indiana cuts it to 3. And again, Arizona is good enough to get the buckets necessary to get the W. But obviously, if you're up 19, you ought to feel pretty good about the way things are going. Is this an Arizona inconsistency thing, or are they not talented to put teams away?
I think it's
talented
twofold.
Enough.
But first of all, I want to say awesome throwback uniforms for Arizona night. Awesome throwback post-game show for us tonight. I love that I'm joining the two of you guys and have the opportunity to do this again. It's been a long time coming. But I think that it might actually be a style of play thing, Schu, a little bit with Arizona. I think they might be talented enough, maybe not so on the defensive end, but I think just because Arizona is so based off of runs on their own side of things, on the offense side of the ball, sometimes, and we love that they play fast, sometimes they speed up a little bit too much, in my opinion. They're a little bit too fast. They might get a little bit careless, take some early shots when, you should go inside and get Ballo or Tubelis some easier looks. And when you do play that quickly, and when things, when you don't get those good looks, that can turn into some easier buckets going the other way for your opponent. I think we saw that on a couple different occasions tonight, specifically in the second half. I think Arizona had 3 empty trips. Ballo had been a monster in the second half on a couple different occasions. He didn't touch the ball on any of those 3 occasions. And I think that at that point, Indiana cut the lead to 3. Luckily for Arizona, though, talent-wise, they're good enough offensively to then weather those storms and then put on their own run when they do settle down, going back on the offensive end.
Yeah, there were a couple things that seemed interesting from an ebb and flow standpoint. It looked like, to a large degree, Indiana was better when things were stabilized in the half court. When Indiana turned the ball over, Arizona's transition game was absolutely lethal. And in the first half, Indiana obviously struggled with turnovers, and Arizona did a very good job making them pay. But then there were times, Brad, where it looked to me like Arizona was also defensively, and Rob alluded to this as well, a little bit flat-footed on that end of the floor. And that seems to be one of those things where, you can almost see it, but you can't quite put your finger on why it is or what's going on. But that ebb and flow element seems to work against Arizona at times, and certainly more times than not to make Wildcat fans comfortable. And it allows teams to get back into the game. Maybe this is a learning lesson. Hopefully that's the case from a Wildcat perspective, but it was interesting to see a lot of momentum shifts in this matchup.
Yeah, and I also kind of wonder if that initial run, and what was it, 17-0 or something to that effect. And
Right.
I was actually listening to Brian Jeffries paint those amazing word pictures that he does. So I didn't
the Brian Jeffries that does the ASU promos for the rivalry game, that Brian Jeffries?
Sure, that Brian Jeffries. So I don't know, but it almost seemed like, in a weird way, that run was a little artificial, as Indiana just couldn't hit a shot or hang on to the basketball. And I know some of those were forced errors, obviously, and some of those missed shots were good defense. But I wonder how many times, you're going to get a run like that. Now, Arizona was able to consistently put together 6-0 runs, 8-0 runs to answer Indiana's runs. But I'm not sure we saw the real Indiana or necessarily the real Arizona on that initial run. But thank goodness Arizona got it, because it was really kind of the difference in the ballgame that kept it from being maybe a nail biter down the end. I think Arizona's the better team, but I'm not sure they're a get up 19 in the first half better than Indiana.
Rob, the teacher right there, did a very nice job raising his hand.
Yeah, I want your opinion, though, Schu. What do you think is we've seen this in a number of games. We saw it even against Cal. We saw it a couple times in Hawaii. Creighton fought back too from a big lead. What do you consider to be the issue for Arizona? Because this isn't a one-off against Indiana tonight. This has been
I think it's
a couple of different times this season this has happened.
I think you're probably looking at three things, and if you want to break them down from a percentage standpoint, I'd say 20% of this is the nature of basketball in general anymore with the three-point shot. Less possessions allow teams to make runs. It's also easy to miss three-point shots if you fall in love with that sort of thing, and teams can string a couple together and things go their way. I think that's about 20%. The other 20% is that Arizona, has a lot of possessions and a little bit of inconsistency. I think they kind of fall in love with what it is they're doing. There's a flat-footed element that concerns me a little bit. And you can almost get a feeling there's a jump in Arizona's step when things are going well, and when they have to grind it out a little bit, then it seems like it takes 3 or 4 possessions for them to get somehow comfortable and back in a routine. In those 3 or 4 or more possessions, I think it's one of those things where teams have an opportunity to get back into it and garner a little bit of momentum of their own. The other 60%, and I think this is fixable, is there is an element of Arizona just needing to learn, and hopefully this is the type of game where you can do that 15-point leads don't matter. And if you can push 15 to 25, that helps a lot. So you might as well continue to try to do what you're doing to the best of your success and start resting on whatever your laurels and perhaps overconfidence ultimately are. So there's a variety of factors that I think go into this from a Wildcat fan point perspective. I think it's going to be frustrating every now and again, but hopefully it's something that Arizona can learn from and can be coached. I guess to a large degree, Rob, Brad, you're also looking at a team that defensively isn't great on every possession, and at some places on the floor can be beat by good talent. Brad touched on something, where you're in a position where, you get a lot of things working your way, and then they just kind of level off a little bit, and defensively they just have to be a little bit more solid. But in the end, you know, in what oddly was a hostile environment, the environment in that game was great, but it sounded like, based on the television broadcast that we saw, that Indiana fans showed up in droves, which is fantastic. In Vegas, we're accustomed to Arizona fans to be there, and they were very well represented as well. But, you know, it's a lot of things that we get to digest, and keep providing us with some comments too. We'll get to a number of those as well. Want to take a brief break here to let you know about a couple things. Tap and Bottle is the location in Tucson for the Arizona Road watch parties. Stay tuned for upcoming away basketball watch party information. Mike, Luke, and a lot of the folks who are listening to this broadcast are great about going out to a Tap and Bottle. It's the 6th Avenue location by 7th Street. Also across from Miller Surplus and whatever the monstrosity is in the future Aviation Highway. All of it right there is at that Tap and Bottle, and watching a lot of Arizona basketball road games is going to occur there, and that's going to be a fun atmosphere. And in addition to imbibing on some fine libations, you can also partake in some Mountain Mike's pizza. Mountain Mike's is available at Tap and Bottle during the watch party. There's also a location in Tucson at Wetmore and Oracle, lunch buffet available, and they have football specials on Sundays and Thursday nights. Also things to keep in mind on that front. Again, a number of things to break down. Arizona's inside game, and Brad, let's dissect that a little bit. One of the things that you talked about, and I think it's very important to try to help Arizona quell some of this momentum, is one of the advantages they have is Tubelis and Ballo. And if they can feed those guys, it's going to be consistently. That's something that can stop runs when things have a tendency to get out of hand. And tonight they were both very good again.
Yeah, and I think the advantage there is you also don't have to. There's not just one way they attack. You know, you can feed Tubelis at the top of the key, can put the ball on the floor. They can get out on the break. I thought Indiana abandoned the help defense on Ballo a little too early on a few possessions, because he just waited them out. When the second guy left, he turned his shoulder in towards the basket. But having those two guys who again can score in a variety of ways, whether it's the dunks, the putbacks, the runners, is a huge advantage. And Vesar had a couple good buckets today. Eventually that outside shot's going to start dropping for him, and he's going to be a valuable third big. I mean, again, I think Mike and I have talked about this. I think Schu and I have talked about this on the show. He starts at how many schools in the Pac-12? Dylan Anderson, who doesn't even sniff the floor tonight, starts it, or at least plays significant minutes at half the Pac-12. And that's just the depth Arizona has on the front line. I think the real challenge is, and I thought other than those possessions, those empty possessions, and Rob mentioned, Arizona does a good job getting those guys touches. This isn't something where they go 5-6 minutes without the bigs touching the basketball. There might be 3 or 4 possessions, but they're never going too long without making sure those guys get their touches.
But Brad, the thing that they sometimes do, I think, is on the perimeter, they get flat-footed. And then it's almost like they watch what's going to happen with Ballo and Tubelis on the inside. And when that happens, sometimes it feels like the offense in the half court isn't as functional as you'd like it to be.
Yeah, and I think that is a concern. And I mean, I think you see a lot of teams do that. So I think it's something that's fixable. But I also think, sometimes you see that on the defensive end too, where they just assume those shots are gonna get blocked, and they kind of get blown by, and sometimes they block them, or sometimes they force the miss. But other times guys get some good looks. So I think that is a definite concern for this team. The good news is when it's all clicking, it can click and kill you in so many ways. And, tonight was interesting. I'm not sure. Did Henderson play more than 2 minutes in the second half? I don't remember seeing him. Why? Adama Ball stepped up. And Vesar stepped up. So you didn't need to slide him over to the 4. So tonight they got other guys to step up. Pelle Larson finally came out of whatever hibernation he was in. So that's kind of the beauty of this team. And that's what, again, I think we can all admit, that reminds us of a loot team. I mean, how many times did, if one of the top 5 didn't have it, someone else did. when you let the guys play free and loose like that, new guys can step up, and that's kind of a joy to watch after the previous 11, 12 years.
Brad touched on two names, Visar and Ball, who Rob, I think, both played probably their best games of the year. And
I think it's been their best games in Arizona uniforms for sure, Schu. And yeah, that was something when you first brought up the question is like, not only is it Arizona's big men that are playing well, the two starters, obviously Tubelis and Ballo, but Visar's already growing into his own. And he played with a toughness I didn't think I was actually going to see from him tonight. I thought it was going to be a tough matchup for him, just based on some of the things that we saw early on in his Arizona career early on this season. But he showed some toughness early on when he came in, blocked a shot, grabbed some tough rebounds, was throwing his elbows around. So if Arizona has those three bigs that are going to continue to at least, contribute off the bench with Visar, all the better. Adama Ball, Brad, I could not agree with you more. You had tweeted something. He's so close to putting it all together. He's the guy when after the Cal game, Mike and I were talking about it, that he's a guy that when he comes in, I don't feel like he's ever going to do anything that's going to hurt Arizona. He's solid enough that he's not going to take anything off the table when he's there. I wasn't sure how much he brought to the table necessarily, but if you can get him to step up, and he's going to play solid defense, he's athletic, he's long, he's really able to stay in front of his man. But if he's going to be able to knock down a couple shots here and there, all the better. But other guys that stepped up tonight though too, Pelle Larson stepped up when, especially in the first half, when somebody like Courtney Ramey, he was off, only had 3 points, I think, in the first half. Larson finally had his coming out party tonight. So I think out of those three guys, Arizona got three of the best efforts that we've seen from three of their players so far this season in Larson, Visar, and Ball.
Yeah. And if you get that kind of depth, it obviously helps when somebody has an off night. And I guess we'd also be remiss, and again, rightfully so, Visar, probably best game of the year, Rob alluded, probably best game in Arizona uniform, Ball the same. Kriisa was good tonight too. And that's a consistency that has been very good. And one of the things, Rob, between the two of he and Tubelis have a very nice connection that gives, I think, gives Arizona an opportunity to continue to be effective on the offensive end. Even though they went into some lulls, the U of A scored about its average tonight. So in the end, it was a good offensive performance where they shot well over 50%.
Yeah, absolutely. Shot it to, right around 50%, 49% on the what I love, though, is the 40% from behind the arc that they shot tonight. We can look at those numbers a little bit better, but back to Tubelis and Kriisa, the two of them play so well off of each other. And all I think about every time I see Tubelis play now is what a pain in the ass that guy must be to play against. He plays angles so well. His hands are so good. His footwork is amazing. He's never in a rush when he gets the ball in the low block. When he hustles down the floor, he always gets right to his spot. He seals his guy off with his big butt all the time and gives, Kriisa or whoever has the ball in the high post a chance to throw in a great entry pass. But holy cow, that guy he never stops. And as a big man, you don't necessarily see one big guy run the floor as well as Arizona has. Arizona, all of their big men run the floor better than almost anybody in the country. And I mean, some of those passes got away from Arizona tonight, but my goodness, Tubelis just beats his guy down the floor, wins his spot every single time. Kriisa does a great job of finding him on those spots too. And if I were another big man, you don't see that sort of game all that much anymore on the low block. And he's just such a pain in the ass to prepare for, I would imagine.
What do you let's answer Nick Howard's question down there. Do you think Tubelis has a spot in the NBA perhaps?
Oh man, I don't know if he's athletic enough to play in the NBA. I don't know if he shoots the ball well enough to play in the NBA from the outside. Those things can develop, at least the outside shot. But I mean, it's not that bad if he wants to go over and have a 15-year career overseas. He's going to make a heck of a ton of money over there too. I would love to see him get a chance in the NBA, obviously, but I just don't know athletically how good he's going to be able to play there.
Yeah, he's going to have to develop a jumper if he's going to play in the NBA. I will say this, Rob, you mentioned the angles. He has an economy of movement that he doesn't really waste a lot of steps. He doesn't go out to go in. I mean, he knows it's almost like a running back finding the hole. He kind of feels it out and goes right to the hole. Whereas, Bala will back his guy down, will hold it, will pump fake. Zoo's just got, that economy of motion. I think some of that's being the lefty too. I think a lot of guys are surprised when he puts up those, that left-handed scoop shot that's almost coming the opposite of everything you normally see. But I will say this, interesting enough, the guy I think has a place in the NBA, even though the game has changed, is Balla. I think is athletic enough for a guy his size. He rebounds well enough. He won't be a starter, and obviously he's 10 years too old, or else he's Okafor from Duke, who is, the third pick overall. But Balla's going to be probably in the league for a while because of things he can do.
All right. We'll get to some of your other comments as well and break down more aspects of Arizona's 89-75 victory over Indiana. First, want to let you know about Octane Raceway and Mavericks. Octane is the only full-time indoor-outdoor track in the United States. Meanwhile, Mavericks, 22 bowling lanes, 85 arcade games, state-of-the-art laser tag arena, billiards tables, dozens of 4K TVs, 1,500 square feet of meeting and event space, 5,000 square foot restaurant and bar featuring a chef-curated menu, craft beers, custom cocktails, pretty much daily specials as well. So they've been really good to the PHNX group, so give them some love as well. Octane Raceway and Maverick. And of course, remember the DraftKings Sportsbook app for some great specials for newcomers as well. For the newcomers out there, and I know a lot of you watching and listening to this broadcast have the DraftKings Sports app and are enjoying it. And hopefully you're partaking in some of those King of Parlay specials. We all know you're the king of parlays out there, and you have an opportunity to boost those up to 100%, depending on how many legs you want to get up to. For new customers, however, who download the DraftKings Sports app, use the promo code PHNX, make your first deposit of $5, and get $200 in free bets instantly. Remember, if you have a gambling problem, 1-800 next step. Anything, major situation in the game. It got testy. Indiana was getting things close. Arizona was able to arm length them pretty much throughout. Was that goaltending miss? One of the worst calls we're going to see all year long. And then on the other end, while Arizona didn't score immediately, there were a couple fouls that were called in that possession, and the Cats were able to push it up. I think that was a sequence that has a chance to move it to 5, and then Arizona turns it into another 9-point lead. And of course, that adds possessions here and there a little bit. If you're an Indiana fan, and you're probably not an Indiana fan if you're watching this post-game show. If you are, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. But I think you would be rather annoyed by that glaring miss. Wow. And I can understand why Woodson was as irked as he was.
I thought originally, though, and I want your feed on this too, Brad, is I thought live, at least from the angle that we had from the broadcast, I thought it was a pass. And I think the officials thought it was a pass too. Now, that doesn't change if it's, necessarily close to the cylinder and heading down, but I could understand the mistake. Looking at those replays, totally got it wrong. And it was a huge changing point in the game. I don't know if you guys have been watching the World Cup, but maybe we should have gone to VAR for that and, checked it out.
And then Harry Kane could have missed the free throw?
Well, then England's going to England, Brad. That's just what's going to happen. And, I maybe they're just getting ready for the Pac-12 officials, because that was a totally blown call, massive point in the game. But, hey, Arizona was there to take advantage of it. Sometimes those calls go your way. Sometimes you're not able to take advantage of it. Arizona was. So kudos to them for being able to take advantage of what looked initially like a pass, but maybe was closer to the cylinder than I had originally imagined.
I thought it was short initially, live, and then when they showed the replay, it was going to, it would have at least hit front iron. I thought it was coming. Yeah. So whether it was a pass or live, it didn't look as bad as it did on the replay. Yeah, it was a missed call.
Okay. That was an interesting question that Nick Howard had up there. Said something to the effect of, why are we complaining it went our ways? I don't know necessarily if he's referencing the specific call on the potential goaltend, or if he's talking about Arizona overall. Let's address this potentially from an Arizona overall standpoint. Cats win a game against a highly ranked team by 14 points. Why are we complaining? Complaining is a harsh word. Why are we concerned? Because Arizona had a 19-point lead in this game, and had an opportunity to keep this at double figures throughout and didn't do it. Indiana is a feisty basketball team that is going to be a tough out in the NCAA tournament, but they're not the best team in the country. And there are a lot of tough teams out there. And there are a lot of athletic teams out there. And there are a lot of games, especially in the tournament, that Arizona's going to face where situations like that, they have to be effective and be in a position where they can play closer to 40 minutes and not get into these flat-footed situations. And if they do that, if they're like, let's use Houston, Alabama today. Houston was up 15 against Alabama. So I understand that this happens in basketball in general and certainly in college basketball. But if you come across a team like Alabama or an Arkansas or Houston get up 15, they're gonna grind, they're gonna pound, they're gonna fight, and you're gonna have an answer. And it's that kind of toughness that Arizona, I think, needs to develop. The potential here is that the U of A has a good learning opportunity that 19 ain't safe, but you can't keep giving up 19-point leads and making it a lot closer than you want to.
That's
Go
the
ahead,
thing,
Ryan.
Schu. That's the thing, and it's been that it's happened on a number of occasions this year. If it was a one-off tonight, sure, you're all out. You're like the blackjack dealer in Vegas where they are. We're out of here. We're okay. But with it happening a couple of times against quality teams, it might end up being an issue. And luckily for Arizona, they've been able to overcome those on a number of different occasions. You always want to be able to learn from a victory instead of learn from a loss, and Arizona's been able to do that. So hopefully they can right this moving forward. But like you said earlier, it just could be, it's part of the game, the way that it's played now with how prevalent the three-point shot is, not only in the NBA, but also now in college too. You can have these big swings back and forth.
And normally good teams are going to do that. Whether they're able to come all the way back, which Indiana almost did or not, I think that is a huge thing to know. I mean, bad teams do it. Cal did it. I mean, Cal never was in striking distance to win that game, but that should have been a 35-point blowout for Arizona, and it was, 14? I will say this also, as this is our throwback show with the throwback uniforms, you got to remember, when Arizona wins, we pick out the bad things. And when they lose, especially during the early parts of the Mike Stoops era, I look for the good stuff and got called a homer. So that's just how the show's always been. So why should we not go back to the bread and butter of what built this threesome into the powerhouse that we were?
To give you an example of the age factor, looking at those uniforms tonight, and it's like, wait, those are throwbacks? Those are pretty good.
No,
I remember those.
I
remember those from yesterday. I like those unis.
This
Look
is
at Rob.
serious.
Rob's pointing.
This is serious. Everyone's talking about how they had them as kids. Remember when you were pretending you were Salim in the front? The blue shorts were my senior year in college intramural uniform. So while everyone else is talking about playing in the front yard as a kid, I was like 23 wearing those, playing at Bear Down Gym on the Saturday intramural league.
I was a tad annoyed that the shorts have gotten shorter. They should have gone back to the style that was much more prevalent in '97 and really lived this. Rob disagrees.
No.
Rob likes the shorts. Rob likes the middle range short shorts. You don't like the all the way down to the shin. So this is a good fashion statement to you?
I thought it was a good balance between the two. What it was, just I think that I went back and for some reason I was watching like old Kansas Memphis highlights from when they played in the championship, and I could not believe how long like Mario Chalmers shorts were. And I was like, how do you run in those things? Like they're down like, they almost look like capri pants because they're like mid calf. It's just, they're terrible.
Brad, how do you defend Arizona?
Make him shoot threes?
Yeah, I think you have to pack the middle. I think you've got to, use probably mix in a lot of zone and hope that Arizona can't find a Kyle Fogg who can get to the elbow, or Miles Simon can get the elbow, and force them to shoot threes. And take advantage of turnovers. I mean, as good as he played tonight, Kriisa had 6 turnovers. Arizona only had 10, and shockingly, Indiana finished with 10. After having 8 in the first half.
Yeah, because it felt like every time it felt like every time Indiana had a turnover, Arizona scored.
Yeah, and I think they did. I think they were something like 18 points off those 10 turnovers. But that's what I would do. Yeah, because Arizona's not going to shoot 40% every night from 3, and if they do, they're going to beat you. Now, also the big advantage in this game for Arizona is they shot 25 free throws. I think Indiana shot somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12.
Because because Arizona keeps pounding it inside and
pounding it inside with big, strong guys. And that's the thing. We talk about how athletic Tubelis is. Tubelis is still a load. I mean, he's what, 230, 6'11", 230, and moves into contact, because what he tries to do, he tries to slide off you and use those angles, but he draws contact, and he does a very good job absorbing contact and getting his shot off. So when you combine that with whatever Ballo's listed, I think it's only 250 or 260 now. I think he came in at 290. You hit those guys, and odds are they're still going to get the shot up and draw the foul, and it's really tough to defend. And that's I think what is so unique about Arizona is they're this up-tempo team with bigs, and a lot of times when we see up-tempo team with bigs in Arizona history, even they're built like Channing Frye, they're built like Bramlett, or they're undersized. Ricky Anderson was a 6'8", 6'9" power forward. This is two basic sub-7-footers who get up and down the floor, and then one of them happens to be a load as well. I mean, that play where Ballo got the tip on the lob, the passes, for a guy his size to adjust like that in the air and lay the ball,
ridiculously athletic play, right?
And he's ridiculously strong. So he's a very unique player in college basketball. It just makes Arizona that much tougher. They're not. It's not like Visar and Henderson running the floor. At 6'11" and 210 pounds and whatever he is, 6'7". These are two legit big men who happen to also be wildly athletic.
Okay. I was trying to think of who. I'm sorry. I was trying to think of who in Arizona history has Arizona, at least in my estimation, hasn't had a player like Ballo ever. At least like that I can think of that's been that big, that strong, and that soft-handed as well. This is a guy that you look at that usually is playing in the Big Ten.
How is he different than Ayton? Because Ayton's obviously big. Ayton's obviously strong.
Yeah, I think that he's a little bit – he might be bigger than Ayton. Ayton moved better. Ayton can step out and shoot the ball, but I think that I think the ball is just an absolute – exactly, a walking refrigerator is a great way to put it, Mello. I just don't see a guy that's that big and strong necessarily. He's almost like Coburn from Illinois, but just bigger and better than the guy that Illinois had for a couple of years. He
reminds me, actually, if you want, I think the comparison, I think – the Big Ten has players like that, but I think he reminds me actually of two Okafors, both Jahlil Okafor, who played for Duke, and a little bit of Emeka Okafor from UConn, who were those big, strong, but yet still athletic guys. And I think, I think someone put up Brian Williams. That might be the closest Arizona comparison, but Williams wasn't that strong. Right? He's probably, Williams was a legit 6'10", but Ballo's a legit 7 foot, and then you get him into 260, and then you get a German Shepherd headbutting my camera, and
and it feels like you just experienced some sort of Richter scale activity. That was well done.
Yeah, he's the big man of the four dogs in the Alice household.
Yeah, it was good to you to have a little visual effect there to bring to the equation. I thought that was very nice.
Stepping up.
Also very nice, and we've talked about the tap and bottle watch parties. Keep ears open for that. Mike's going to keep you updated on when road game watch parties occur at the Tap and Bottle in Tucson at 6th Avenue. But Four Peaks is always there, and Four Peaks, good to the PHNX gang. The folks in Tempe are well aware of Four Peaks as well, and they've got a Christmas special advent calendar box going on now for $55. Four Peaks, you can enjoy specialty beers, tall boys, and more. And remember to check out the 8th Street Pub in Tempe to purchase that advent calendar and other things related to Four Peaks. If you're outside the East Valley, obviously you can get Four Peaks at a lot of locations in and around Arizona and your general viewing audience. Also want to let you know about OG's CBD brands. Plenty of flavors out there. So if that's something that can help you get through, OG's is the way to go. And OG's, like all these other sponsors, has stepped up in a good way for the folks in the gang at PHNX. Remember, though, with OG's and CBD, must be 21 plus to enjoy. So be sure to take advantage of that. If guys, as we wrap up, if by the end of the game you get an 89-75 final, probably a little bit more separation there than the competitive nature of the game actually was. It's probably closer to 7, I guess, if you wanted to average it out a little bit. Generally speaking, pleased with Arizona's performance against a good team in Vegas. Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, very pleased. I think anytime you can go up against a top 15 opponent on what was a neutral floor, but maybe skewed a little bit more towards Indiana fans, anytime you can go there and come away with a win, that's going to be great. Arizona's non-conference resume going into March, and we always joked about this with, our old friend Ryan Hansen, that it's, too early to talk about March. It's never too early to talk about getting these non-conference wins, that when the committee goes and looks at them, those are going to be quality, good wins. This is a very good non-conference schedule that Arizona's played. They're coming through it unscathed so far. One more hurdle to get over in Tennessee, but yeah, if Arizona would have won by 1 point, I would have been happy tonight. Winning by in the margin that they did tonight, ecstatic. Couldn't ask for a better victory for Arizona tonight.
This was a Sweet 16 game, is what it really was. When you factor in where Arizona is probably going to be ranked, where Indiana is going to be ranked, the fact that it was a non-conference or a neutral site, but two fan bases kind of packed the arena. I mean, I think this might be the best of these kind of prep games, because this isn't like playing in Phoenix where it's an Arizona crowd, or playing in some of these where there's kind of no one there. I mean, this was, I don't know how close to sellout, but it sounded loud. Again, a lot of Indiana fans, but this could be a 2-3 matchup in the second weekend very easily. And I think
what a great atmosphere there as well. And it's nice to see continue. We know this from Arizona. It's good to see Indiana do the same. When fan bases back their programs, it's really a joy to get that kind of atmosphere. And I think both teams were fortunate in that regard.
And I like to add, it's fun seeing a new team. They've never played Indiana. I was trying to think of other programs they haven't played, and there's not many. So the fact that we got a matchup that would never have happened under Lute and Bobby Knight because of their utter disdain for each other, and wasn't going to happen when Archie and Sean were in Tucson.
Thank goodness that didn't happen, because the final score would have been 2-0.
It would have looked like that Army Navy football game today.
There's more. Oh my gosh, just a rock fight. That would have been atrocious.
We are remiss to mention that there's been a lot of talk this week about Arizona and Indiana not facing each other, and those two dynamics that played a role in going into that, in addition to not having not matching up in the NCAA tournament, it is interesting that in a large portion of the high level windows of both of these programs, that you had two specific reasons that neither team was going to play each other.
Yeah, and I also find it interesting. I've been racking my brain. Is there another Power 5 team Arizona hasn't played? I'm sure there is, but I can't think of it because of all those weird December games Lute used to play. So I'm like, oh, maybe they haven't played Pitt. No, they went to Pitt. Oh, no, they went to Providence. They've had a random game at Florida State. Or LSU. So it's really
it's one of those things that the answer will be more than we think, but your point is still valid.
I can't think of one off the top of my head, and that's fun. I like playing Tennessee because we hadn't seen Tennessee in years. As much as it's nice to have regional rivalries with UNLV and BYU and Gonzaga and San Diego State, it's fun seeing someone new across the court from you, and let's hope they keep doing this. And I think Tommy Lloyd is much from the Gonzaga school, which is really the Lute Olson school. And there's going to be plenty of these games, whether it's in Maui, whether it's in Vegas, or whether, in Cameron next year, and then back in Tucson the year after that.
The Lute Olson will play anybody but New Mexico and Indiana school. That is.
Pretty much.
or as Jose states, the St. Joe's cancellation game that winter.
Yes.
Schu knows all about me running into Philadelphia fans the night before my wedding and arguing over that game.
I certainly do. All right, guys. Hey, this has been fantastic. If situations for themselves, maybe there'll be other opportunities for this to take place. Thanks as always for carrying my old backside and taking part on the PHNX broadcast, where we were able to talk about a pretty damn solid and certainly entertaining Arizona W. And I know you guys will be on Mike's broadcasts on a fairly regular basis again. And as always, I hope the fans out there who always participate and help us through this will be chiming in and watching you, Rob, and watching you, Brad, as all of us get together and chat with our pal Mike.
Love it. Love jumping on with you guys. Miss you both. And hopefully we can do this again on a regular basis.
All right, guys. Rock the holidays. Brad, you do the same, man. Hey, that's it. Thanks for watching the AZ Wildcats post-game broadcast, listening to it as well. This is PHNX.